are beginning tonight with team coverage of the South Carolina Republican primary. Our reporters are in Columbia and in Charleston covering the candidates.
It is a big night for democracy. Thank you so much for joining us for News 19 at 7. I'm Andrea Mock.
And I'm Darcy Strickland. It was a busy day at the polls today. We know the polls closed at 7 o'clock. Opened at 7 o'clock this morning. Long lines have been reported all day as voters made their choice between former President Donald Trump and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Yeah, it certainly was a big day as far as voter turnout. Some experts even said it could be 1 million people at the polls today. News 19 Zoe Henry is live with voters in Richland County. And Zoe, since the polls, if you're in line at 7, you're still allowed to vote. How's it looking at your precinct?
Well, this is one of the busiest precincts I've been to all day today. This is River Springs Elementary School. They're actually locking the doors right now. If you look over there, he just came and he's locking the doors. The polls are closed. But like I said, it was one of the busiest precincts I've been to all day. The line was super long when I first got here. I spoke with voters and some of them said they were in line for as long as 45 minutes. Now, here's one of those voters that I spoke with.
Was what I expected. I expected to vote, so the intent was clearly met. I'm just glad to see there were a lot of people. I guess it communicates to me that there's a lot of concern with respect to where we're at as a nation and where we're potentially going.
So depending on the time of the day that you came to this precinct, if this is your assigned precinct, there were two reasons that there were long lines. Earlier today, I spoke with poll workers and we got a report into our newsroom that there were issues with the poll machines inside, but they were able to resolve that and get back working. The second reason for the long lines that poll workers told me was precincts were consolidated, and so there was more than one precinct voting right here at River Springs Elementary. But for now, I'm in Irmo. Zoe Henry, News 19, WLTX.
Zoe, thank you so much. Former Governor Nikki Haley and her mother cast their votes in Kiowa Island this morning.
Yep, they went in. You can see that's her mom in the wheelchair. And she also went with her son Nayland and her daughter Rena and her daughter's new husband. Haley posted some pictures of them casting their ballots, saying that they are blessed to live in America, where she is a first-generation American with the right to vote. That's her son right behind her that you see. And the former governor says, win or lose, she is staying in the race and moving on to Super Tuesday.
We're going to be campaigning all day today, and then we're going to keep going all the way through Super Tuesday. People want to see us continue this fight. We owe it to them to continue this fight.
Our team coverage continues as we follow Haley's campaign. News 19's Rachel Ripp is live in Charleston at the former governor's watch party. Rachel.
Yes, Darcy, Andrea, I'm here at the Charleston Place Hotel, and we're seeing a lot of supporters trickle their way in. They made their way in about 6:45 this evening. They're all waiting on Nikki Haley. Now it seems like there are more like 30 to 40 of these people. We're seeing signs as well. We're seeing people wearing Nikki Haley gear, walking around with food and drinks. And as you said earlier today, Nikki Haley voted herself with her son and also with her mother in Kiowa Island. We've seen her across the state making her way through parts of the Midlands as well, hosting rallies in Camden and Irmo and different areas. We're going to see all of those election results coming up here on WLTX, and we're also going to be expecting to hear from Nikki Haley here in just a couple minutes. Her media is expected to arrive at any time right around 7 o'clock, so we'll be waiting to hear from her. For now, I'm going to send it back to you guys. Reporting live in Charleston, Rachel Ripp, News 19, WLTX.
Rachel, thank you so much. 4 minutes after 7 o'clock, it looks like the Associated Press has already called the race in South Carolina.
Yeah, in all of my time being a reporter here in almost 20 years, I have never seen the AP call a race this quickly. Now, as we know, in the last couple of presidential elections, there has been issues with the vote. There has been issues at different precincts, and for some time it took hours at certain precincts to get the vote called. So this is kind of unprecedented that at 7:04 the race has been called. But here's what's at stake. We are talking about 50 delegates here in South Carolina. Of course, we have 46 counties. 50 delegates are to be given out. They give 29 delegates to the winner in the state, and then 3 delegates, Darcy, go to the leader in each of our 7 congressional districts.
As you can see for yourself on that map, it shows zeros across the board, and that's because polls have been closed for less than 5 minutes. But when the Associated Press calls these races this early, it's primarily based off of exit polls and what people believe or what experts believe people voted like with early voting. And so we know there's early voting across South Carolina that ended on Thursday. More than 200,000 people participated, exercised their right to early voting in the Republican primary. You compare that to the total number of people who voted in the Democratic Party, and that number across the state was only 131,000 voters. So 70,000 more people in South Carolina participated in early voting in the GOP primary than total number that showed up to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah, pretty incredible. Like Darcy said, before we even went in today, more than 200 voters in South Carolina had already cast their ballot, which is perhaps a reason why the AP has called this so quickly. But again, 50 delegates at stake, 29 will be awarded to the winner. And if you want to know where the delegates stand right now, they are 63 for Trump and 17 for Haley. Is this a live look?
This is not a live look unless that's what we're about to hear from.
This is
a live look. Okay, all right, let's listen in to the former president.
This is at the South Carolina State Fairgrounds.
This was a little sooner than we anticipated. It was an even bigger win than we anticipated. And I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina. So that's pretty good. So it's a record times 2, and there's something going on in the country. Some really great things are going on. You look outside and you see all of the horror. You see millions and millions of people coming across the border illegally. We don't know where they come from. They come from jails. They come from prisons. They come from all sorts of places that we don't want to know. They come from mental institutions.
All right, well, we heard Donald Trump speaking live there. You saw Governor McMaster standing behind him. You saw Pamela Yvette standing behind him, and one of his daughters-in-law was also standing behind him. Our own News 19's Nate Stanley is out there. Donald Trump speaking live at the state fairgrounds. Let's check in with Nate.
Yeah, Andrea, that's right. Just a lot of energy right now in the last 5 minutes as former President Donald Trump has taken the podium and is speaking right now. As you mentioned, the AP called the poll not too long after 7 p.m. This place absolutely erupted when that news came through. It's been completely filled, full of media, full of supporters here. If you can't tell behind me, a lot of energy coming in today. Just speaking with some supporters today, said they're excited for a change and they think Donald Trump could be the one to do it. We're going to bring you updates all night long from here at the State Fairgrounds. Reporting in Columbia, Nate Stanley, News 19, WLTX.
Standing behind me.
All right, Nate, thank you so much. Yeah, so pretty incredible there. The AP calling the race already for former President Donald Trump. He has been crisscrossing the state this week, had a huge rally last night in Rock Hill.
One thing we know from the former governor is that she says that she plans to stay in the race through Super Tuesday, regardless of the results of tonight. Obviously not turning out like what she had hoped for, but it looks like we've still got some time for Nikki Haley and her supporters to continue to campaign.
And it doesn't mean she won't get delegates. That's the other thing about the way South Carolina divvies up its delegates. If she wins one of the congressional districts here in South Carolina, that means she will get those 3 delegates. The lead vote getter in our congressional districts gets 3 delegates, so she might still end up getting delegates. If you're looking at the delegate count right now, it is 63 delegates for Trump until he is awarded these officially here in South South Carolina, and Nikki Haley has 17 delegates. Now, that magic number to win at the Republican National Convention that is going on in Milwaukee on July 5th is 1,215 delegates.
But Super Tuesday coming up the first week in March, and so it'll be interesting to see how she continues to campaign, what supporters do. At this point, it's all about money, whether or not she can continue to get funds in from supporters, and again, how long this will last for the former governor. But losing today in South Carolina means that this is the first time Nikki Haley has ever run for office or run for a political contest and lost in South Carolina.
Yeah, we are finally getting our numbers in. Now, this is just populating. I'm actually going to walk over there and take a look at it since we are on live TV. This is just populating now. These are the numbers. 63% of the vote for Nikki Haley, or excuse me, 63% of the vote for Donald Trump, and we have got 53% for Nikki Haley. The reason why you were seeing Chris Christie, of course, he dropped out of the race. It was just because they had a zero populated number. But now's the time that we can look a little bit more closely at some of our Midlands counties. So, okay, well, here's Richland County. It's not going to work yet. They haven't populated the numbers just yet, still showing 0%. But yeah, like Darcy said, Super Tuesday will be the big day. There are 16 states. They call it Super Tuesday for a reason. 16 states will be casting their ballots on Super Tuesday. And we are talking about whoppers when it comes to delegates. California will be voting on Super Tuesday. North Carolina is voting on Super Tuesday. Texas also voting on Super Tuesday. And again, Nikki Haley has said she is staying in the race until then. But yeah, certainly if we tap out of this and we go back to the main look there, it was 63% for Donald Trump. Well, we'll get back to it in a second. 63% for Donald Trump in our state. The AP has called it. Now, we've got a lot more to cover here on News 19. We have got our insiders here. J.R. Barry is going to be checking in with them, and we are going to give you a breakdown of how all the counties look and how the counties voted. That's all coming up. Make sure you stay with us.
The AP calling the race tonight for former President Trump over former Governor Nikki Haley. Our State House insiders tonight, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, Trav Robertson, the former state Democratic Party chair. So let's get reaction. A couple of
Do
minutes.
you have anything else to do while we're basically done? I mean,
It's over.
everything that has led up to the first in the South primary is done 5 minutes after we get started. I think so here's probably what's going to end up happening. I think, Trav, is we're now going to say 11 out of the last 12 presidential cycles, South Carolina has picked the presidential nominee.
And I think one important factor in all this is how easy our primary process is done and the manner by which we return results. That's why the Republicans and the Democrats consistently choose our state through the nominating process.
These two candidates never debated here in South Carolina before this primary. Do you think it mattered with voters?
I don't think it did. I think it mattered to Nikki Haley.
Right.
I think she wanted to have that moment on the stage with him. And Donald Trump is basically...
He didn't have to.
He didn't have to do anything. He's not stepped on a debate stage once in this entire cycle,
And
JR.
why put him in a position that hurts him among the electorate when he doesn't have to do it?
I don't have a dollar amount, but Nikki Haley spent a whole lot of money on TV ads here in South Carolina. The former president did not. You guys...
He spent a little bit of money in South Carolina. He maybe spent $1.5 million compared to Nikki Haley and the groups that were surrounding her. It was a tenfold increase over what Donald Trump would have done, because I think she was somewhere in the $12 to $14 million range.
But he had momentum coming in after Iowa and New Hampshire, and she didn't. She had a little bit, and I think that's the interesting question is, what does she do now, and who is going to fund her effort going into Super Tuesday?
Because gas in the tank is the only thing that keeps her moving forward. So that's money, folks. I mean, when you think about this, and at home you run out of gas in the car, you can't go anywhere. And right now, Nikki Haley has been getting gas in the car from people who have said, I want somebody other than
An
Trump.
alternative.
Right.
But I think it's really interesting, and we were talking about this privately. I'm curious to know not what the percentages are, but what the actual numbers are and what a win even remotely looks like for Nikki Haley in South Carolina.
So I think she kind of set, JR, she set some ground rules for herself of what the expectation should be. She was third place when she was in Iowa. She got second place in New Hampshire, and both times she closed the gap. But remember, she got 43% of the vote in New Hampshire and considered that a win. And now, if she is not anywhere close to that, if she's not within 15 to 20 points of Donald Trump, I really don't know how many more people are going to be willing to put gas in the tank of Nikki Haley's presidential run for 2024.
I've said it many times. If you can't win your home precinct or your home county, you're never going to win an office. And if you can't win your home state, it's going to be a very long, long road for her.
Got a couple of moments to talk about some exit polling the Associated Press conducted today. 75% of voters today basically saying the charges against the former president right now are all politics. Your take?
It's a Republican primary. I think Republicans are going to turn around and say it's a snow job being done by the Biden DOJ. The Department of Justice is going after Trump in this particular case. And so that's what it's going to naturally look like that.
I mean, when I was chairman, I put the chairman of our parties have the right to put non-binding questions on the ballot. I did so when I was chair. But I think the concerning thing in all of that is the 60% that oppose more aid to the Ukraine. And I never thought I would live to see the day that Republicans would not have a problem with a Russian invading another country, specifically a democracy. I mean, Ronald Reagan's rolling over in his cold, dead grave right now.
And that's a place where I think a lot of people are not fully grasping because of everything that's going on domestically. They're looking at Ukraine and they go, is that just a pit that we're throwing money into? The other one that really gets me here is the 60% support of the 6-week abortion ban in South Carolina.
Low or high? What surprises you?
I think 60% support of that is a little bit lower than what I thought, but if you start looking at the national trend, nationally that would probably make more sense, because when you look at compared with the Democratic population that would tie into that, you're basically going to be a 50-50 split of whether or not 6 weeks is or is not a real good number on the issue of abortion.
And like I said, I want to just bring this back to Nikki Haley. I'm going to, I've got two friends. They texted me before I came in here, and they voted for Donald Trump twice. But today they went into the ballot box to vote for anybody but Donald Trump. And I'm going to be curious to see how many people actually participated in this primary. You and I were talking about it, whether that's attributable to politics or the natural growth of South Carolina. But I'm also going to see, I think that Nikki Haley, is her number going to be 400,000? It's going to be 450,000? I'm curious to see what a two-term governor gets against
Against
the man
Donald
who's-
Trump, because he's the behemoth in the room.
That's
All
right.
right, Dave, Trav, guys, thank you so very much. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with more in just a moment.
Welcome back to News 19. I'm meteorologist Erin Walker. Let's get a check on that forecast on this big night in South Carolina. Looking at our satellite radar, you see the rain moving out of the state. But what we had today, the setup, was a low pressure system with an associated cold front that brought along these rain chances. We started off the day mostly sunny though. As this cold front moves off coast, high pressure takes control. So for the second half of our weekend, plenty of sunshine and dry conditions. Temperatures outside right now, about 57 degrees in Columbia and in Lexington, about 60 degrees still there in Orangeburg, St. Matthews, 52 over there in Manning. The forecast for this evening, we're going to see a pretty mild forecast for tonight. Around 11 p.m. still going to be in the mid 40s. We'll continue to cool down to the lower 30s actually, so please take note if you're heading out tonight to enjoy this evening. As for tomorrow, it's not going to be as cold, or as warm I should say, as what we saw today. About 60 degrees, but again, we see plenty of sunshine and those winds will be calm. Here's your 7-day forecast. Tomorrow, 60 and sunny. As we head towards Monday, we jump into the 70s. 73 by Tuesday as clouds start to move in. Clouds will stick around for Wednesday, but check out that temperature of 79 degrees. Now, rain chances filter in later in the second half of the weekend, and right now we're looking like they're going to stick around until the weekend, but temperatures are going to rebound. More News 19 at 7 coming up after this break.
All right, welcome back to News 19. Breaking news, the AP has called the race for former President Donald Trump. We want to take a quick look. Right now, you can see there's only 2% of the precincts reporting, but Donald Trump beating Nikki Haley by 61% of the vote. More than 10,000 votes have been cast or have been counted already. Let's take a look at two key counties, though, that we see we have got numbers. Lexington County. This is, of course, where Nikki Haley was a representative here at the State House. She right now only has 624 votes in Lexington County and 2% reporting. Going to send things back to Darcy now.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up on air right now, but don't go anywhere. We're going to continue our breaking news coverage of the GOP presidential primary online at WLTX.com. If you're leaving us for now, we'll see you again tonight at 11. Thank you so much for joining us for this special election night coverage. South Carolina GOP primary tonight, and it is a good night for the former President Donald Trump and his supporters as the Associated Press, about 5 minutes after 7 o'clock, called the race for the former president. So the first thing we want to do right now is take a look at how South Carolinians voted. Andrea Mock is standing by now with a closer look at the numbers. Andrea.
Hey, Darcy. Yeah, this is updated minute by minute. So you will see as I stand here, the numbers change. And something else to note, when a county like this comes up in dark and it highlights it, that means that that county has just gotten some new information in. These are our first numbers that we have seen in Richland County. And right now it appears that Nikki Haley is winning Richland County with more than 4,000 votes. But of course, then if you look at how many votes are in, it's 0% of the precincts reporting. Now, I want to take a look at two counties that are important and would have been important for former Governor Haley to win here in South Carolina. Of course, Lexington is where she was an elected state house representative. This is where she lived before she was governor. This is where her children went to school. And you can see, even though there are only 2% reporting, Trump right now taking Lexington with 57%, and that's 845 votes being counted. Also want to look at where Nikki Haley was born. She was born in Bamberg, South Carolina, and right now we have 7%, which is a pretty good amount for being right now at 730. And it shows that Donald Trump is winning in Bamberg County, 57 votes, 61% of the vote. Now, these numbers obviously are going to keep changing, even though we know that the state has already been called for Donald Trump, former president. But let's talk really quickly about the delegates. That's what it's all about, right? That's what these primaries are all about. And South Carolina has 50 delegates to give. But this is the way it breaks down. Nikki Haley may end up winning some delegates from her home state. 29 of our delegates will go to the state winner. So we know that those 29 delegates will go to Donald Trump. But then they will award 3 delegates to the leader in each of our 7 congressional districts. Now, as far as delegates go, this is where we were standing. These numbers you guys on your screen right now are where we were standing before the South Carolina primary. Donald Trump won New Hampshire, Iowa, and Nevada. He has 63 delegates, Nikki Haley having 17 delegates. Of course, it's a wash with Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy having delegates as well. They both suspended their campaigns. So, where does this leave us? Well, Super Tuesday is just around the corner. Super Tuesday is March 5th. And on Super Tuesday, 16 entities vote. There are 15 states and 1 territory that will be voting. A massive number of delegates, 874 delegates, or 36%. Of those delegates will be decided on Super Tuesday. And like we know, big states are voting then. California is voting, Virginia is voting, North Carolina is voting. And Nikki Haley has vowed, like she said, even if she didn't win her home state of South Carolina, she vowed to stay in the race at least until Super Tuesday on March 5th. So again, every time we get an updated number, there's only 3.9% reporting rate now. But as we get an updated county, it goes just a little bit darker. Richland County, though, still slow at getting those precincts in, 0% reporting, and Nikki Haley is the projected winner right now in Richland County with 64% of the vote and more than 4,000 votes. So this is definitely going to be moving and changing throughout the night. We'll take another look at it, but our own J.R. Berry is with his political insiders to talk about South Carolina, J.R., what this means for Nikki Haley going forward.
Andrea, thank you. Dave Wilson, Trav Robertson, our insiders this evening. You guys were listening to the conversation about delegates here in South Carolina. Do you see any way at all that Nikki Haley is going to walk away with a delegate or 2 here?
I think she could pick up 1 or 2, depending upon if she wins a congressional district. I don't necessarily think that she's going to. When we start taking a look at the numbers that are out there right now, I don't think the numbers are going to be there necessarily for her to be able to do any sort of picking up of delegates. That means Donald Trump has come into South Carolina and walked out with 50 delegates. If she wins none at all, that's a significant step forward. That puts him well over 110 delegates. And the math, folks at home, the math that you got to get for a win like this is 1,215 delegates. By the time we finish Super Tuesday, we will have had that many delegates at least awardable by the time we get 10 days from now. So it will not take that much longer, I think, for Donald Trump to sew the rest of this up and we start going home.
Well, and I find it interesting. We're talking about it. What's Haley's end game? She's vowed to stay in till Super Tuesday. Who's funding her effort now? I mean, if you're not winning delegates in a state like South Carolina, her home state, where's the promise of her doing any better on Super Tuesday?
But I think the change of that, though, Travis, you've got people right now who are wanting an alternative to Donald Trump still out there for people to be able to vote on.
Or do they think he's going to be convicted?
Well, there's always that part of it. But the other part of it is, JR, when you look at this, the way you campaign in these latter states is very different than here in South Carolina and the early states.
Haley's campaign manager acknowledging that the math here is challenging for their candidate to move forward. But what the campaign is saying is who can beat Biden in November? And they're saying that when you take the math out of the equation, Nikki Haley, they say, is better suited to go head-to-head with Joe Biden in November than Donald Trump. And they point out that the polling shows time and time again that Haley would win. So while they say the math is challenging, for whatever reason, they're saying they're moving forward and they're staying.
Well, here's the deal. The great thing about South Carolina's primary system is that it allows candidates to not only develop a message for their political and ideological base, but also one for a general election. And the fact is that Nikki Haley has put forward a general election narrative during this campaign in this state, and it still didn't help her win.
Well, it's very interesting because earlier this week, she had a press conference, kind of the state of the campaign, and there was this chatter among some folks, is she getting ready to drop out? Is she going to drop out in her home state? Nowhere near that.
Right.
But what ended up happening, if you watch the entire thing, it was a great setup, a great set with the media there for a set of television commercials, the first of which I saw Thursday night.
Exactly.
right after the Insiders. It aired right here on the station, and it was the two grumpy old men spot with new audio from Haley's press conference.
All right, here's 5% almost reporting right now, and the numbers have kind of tightened up a little bit. Again, albeit with about 5% of the precincts reporting 55-45 right now.
Is that that's the entire state?
That's the entire state.
If she can maintain that, she will consider this a win.
There's no doubt about that.
Because if she can close, all she's setting out to do right now is close the gap against Donald Trump.
If she hits in between 40 and 45%, it's a victory for her tonight. But like I said, we get focused on the percentages when we really should be looking at actual numbers and where those numbers came from in South Carolina.
Because Nikki Haley has got to start being able to pinpoint a message, get it out there. As we were saying a minute ago, JR, when you get to these other states, the Super Tuesday states, there's 21 other states that are getting ready to either have primaries or caucuses over the next 10 days. That's half of America will then have voted in a primary or a caucus leading up to the election.
And what did you say? We're 255 days until November.
Yes. I mean, the last thing, folks at home, that you really, you're sitting here going, are we going to welcome to the general election Groundhog Day of politics? Because that's what it's going to end up being. It's going to end up being this whole discussion for 255 days.
All right, so 205,000 South Carolinians cast ballots early in the South Carolina Republican presidential primary. That's far more than the people who showed up to vote in the Democratic primary 3 weeks ago.
Of course. I mean, you've got a contested Republican primary. I mean, that is something that is cyclical. It happens consistently. I mean, I think in 2016 we had 540,000 people participate. Conversely, the Republicans, I think, did not have a significant. They didn't even have a primary 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, rather. But anyway, that's something that changes. It's cyclical, and I think, quite frankly, it's one of the great things about our state. It forces candidates to campaign in every nook and cranny of South Carolina. It forces them to not only develop a message for their political base, but also one for a general election.
And that is where we have consistently, as a state, kind of weeded out for the rest of America down to a very small group of people who will end up being the finalists for the nomination for both parties. I mean, we can probably now say, unless something miraculous happens over the next few weeks, that Donald Trump's going to probably end up winning the nomination. Joe Biden has won the nomination, and South Carolina will have 11 out of the last 12 presidential elections since 1980. South Carolina's first in the South primary has picked the presidential nominee for both parties.
And the president. I mean, that's one of the great things about our state is because of the makeup of the electorate here, because of the way we force candidates to campaign not in just urban but rural settings, it forces candidates to put together a campaign that speaks to a lot of voters, and that's why we've been successful in picking either the president or nominee.
You look back at 2008 with Obama. Obama comes into South Carolina down by nearly 30 points against Hillary Clinton. He had 90 staffers on the ground in 46 counties working it. I mean, working the grassroots, and ended up flipping that number and wins South Carolina significantly in the 2008 election.
By 701, I mean, almost as early as tonight was called.
So how does Bobby Kennedy Jr. fit into all of this?
This is like Nikki who? Yeah.
How does he figure into all this? If he gets on enough ballots in enough states, how does he figure into the race in November?
I don't think he's going to be a Ross Perot.
Or a Ralph Nader. I don't think he is. I think that the fact is when there is a serious examination of him, his personal life, and his past history, I think people are going to have enough questions. He's not going to get the groundswell of support that he thinks he's going to.
It took Ross Perot and his money and just this tenacity of the little old man from Texas to turn around, because he was so anti George H.W. Bush, Bush 41, that it was everything he could to break the Bush stronghold. And that's where Clinton, winning 40-something% of the vote, ends up becoming president of the United States.
That's not going to happen here.
Trav, we've been told we're expecting about 1 million people to have cast ballots across the state of South Carolina today. Democrats who did not vote in the Democratic primary 3 weeks ago, some admitting earlier in some interviews they crossed over and voted today in the Republican primary here in South Carolina. Do you expect a lot of Democrats to have done that today?
You know, Dave and I were talking about that when we walked in. Everybody likes to use that as an argument for closing our primary system, but I've never seen that happen on a great scale. And I don't think that it's going to be the cause. I think that there are a couple of things here. One is I believe that Donald Trump's voters were actually motivated to vote. There was a question leading up into this election cycle whether you had 72 million people who weren't going to vote because they thought that it was going to be stolen anyway, or 72 million people who were going to be mad as hell and they're going to go vote. Dave pointed out we've also had a significant population increase of Republicans moving from blue states into red states like South Carolina and Texas, which is going to impact the number of people turning out here. And turnout's always higher when you have a contested primary.
And that's the facts. When you look at it, Nikki Haley leaves South Carolina about 7 years ago to go become ambassador to the UN. And in that time period, there has been a ton of in-migration into South Carolina. Nearly 1 million people have moved into our state in the last decade. That has changed the complexion of our state.
Right.
You look at it, and this is how you can tell, folks, when you look at this at home, you look at the number of congressional seats that we actually have. We have 7 congressional seats. We used to only have 6.
Yep.
We're anticipating by 2030 we're going to have probably 8. And they're folks who are moving out of places like California and New York, Massachusetts. Very strong blue states. There's this in-migration of people coming to South Carolina who are saying, I'm very interested in moving into this state because I want more conservative or Republican politics than what I have back in my old home.
And just look at the fact that you've seen a significant change in things like the blue laws in South Carolina in our lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
That is a direct result of an influx of people moving into South Carolina. And if you look at the map, in Horry County, you've got a significant origin of the Tea Party down in Beaufort and Bluffton.
But here's the interesting part on that, though, Trav. I think the interesting part of that is that's where the largest in-migration is
You're
happening.
Exactly right. You're exactly right. And that's to my point. If you go up to the upstate, Anderson, Oconee, Pickens, Greenville, Spartanburg, you've got the old Southern Baptist, conservative, socially, fiscally conservative, but not the Tea Party Republicans. And then you get a mix down in Bluffton and the Ace Basin and whatnot. And I think those are interesting differences to note. And that influx of people moving here affect those various ideologies.
Nikki Haley wanted a debate with Donald Trump here in South Carolina. That debate never happened. As far as moving forward, if Biden and Trump represent their parties in November, will there be a Biden-Trump debate?
Well, I mean, the Presidential Commission sets those. That's an independent body. I don't see how they get around it. Do you?
I don't know that they can get around.
I don't think they can.
Then again, Joe Biden has yet to give a State of the Union speech this year either. And I think the thing that we have to start considering is the greater question I have is, if they do debate, will Trump have learned how to debate better than he did the first time?
All right, I want to hear from the former president. We have some comments from him just a short time ago. Then we're going to get reaction from you guys. Take a listen.
We have incredible friends, and we're going to be up here on November 5th, and we're going to look at Joe Biden, and we're going to look him right in the eye. He's destroying our country, and we're going to say, Joe, you're fired. Get out. Get out, Joe. You're fired. They're destroying our country, and we're going to, I just wish we could do it quicker. 9 months is a long time. I just wish we could do it quicker, Mr. Governor. I wish is there anything you can do with your vast powers to make that, in certain countries you're allowed to call your election date. If I had the right to do it, I'd do it tomorrow.
So there's the former president saying it's going to be the two of them on the ballot in November, and he's going to say, Joe Biden, you're fired.
Right. As we start looking at these numbers starting to come in, Nikki Haley's number is just continuing to drip further and further and further down.
44.5%, now it's 42.8.
And I think if what the predictions were actually do come out, then you're looking at the fact that Nikki Haley, if she drops below 40% in the vote, then she is definitely showing that even in her own home state, she can't let that momentum carry over to a big win.
Let me follow up on something that the former president just said. I want to ask you about it, Trav and Dave. He said they're destroying our country. Is he talking about Joe Biden and Democrats? What's he talking about?
I don't know who he's talking about, because I believe he is destroying our country. I mean, and I've got some very serious thoughts about it. I mean, you know, he's under numerous investigations. He led a group of individuals who tried to overthrow our democracy. So I think don't have a problem debating him about that.
I disagree, and
That's
the reason
fine.
that I disagree is the fact that we have a very, very porous southern border right now. We had a murder that took place just last night, just yesterday, that included a person who had come into America illegally. You've got drugs flowing across the southern border illegally. You've got human trafficking coming across the southern border, and that has been left wide open.
Well,
and in so doing, millions of people, Trav, are coming across into America, and we've got. I heard this last night at the Black Conservative Federation dinner. We have people who are African American veterans who are living homeless, but we're giving illegal immigrants coming into America housing in sanctuary cities. There's a problem with that.
So Donald Trump controlled the United States Congress, the House, and the Senate, and he didn't fix it. So
Joe Biden made it worse?
Joe Biden and the Democrats and the United States Senator Langford from Oklahoma created a bill in the United States Senate just 2 weeks ago, and the Republicans killed it at the request of Donald Trump. That's a fact. That is a fact. We had a bill that would have helped solve this problem, and the Republicans sunk the bill because they didn't. No, listen to me.
I'll listen.
I'm not disagreeing with you about the problem. I'm saying that if it were such an easy fix, why in the hell didn't Donald Trump fix it when he controlled the House and the Senate and the presidency?
They were building a wall and they stopped.
That's right. You're right. He took money away from those veterans that you're so concerned about to build that wall. I forgot about that. You're right. He diverted money from the Department of Defense that went to things to help our military.
It is defense, Trav, when you put up a fence to keep people out. That's
the fact is
national
that Joe
defense.
Biden said 2 weeks ago, send me the bill, I'll sign it, and we will take care of this problem, and the Republicans killed it. That is a fact.
I find it very interesting, though.
Well,
the chief executive officer of the United States of America, which controls the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Border Patrol. That's his job. He is
and
the
Donald
chief
Trump couldn't get it done when he had the House and the Senate.
The chief executive officer.
But yet we're supposed to. Oh, that's right. Mexico was even going to build it, pay for it, but he didn't.
Joe Biden has a capability,
Donald Trump has not
of being able to deal with this.
Donald Trump did?
No. Joe Biden has an ability to use executive power, his job as the chief executive officer of the United States of America, to actually do something about the border issue instead of leaving it wide open.
Donald Trump
is not in the White House right now.
He had his
Joe
Republicans
Biden
kill the bill that would have fixed this problem 2 weeks ago.
What you're hearing here, this is conversations that's happening all across the country.
Right.
Families have families who disagree with each other, friends who disagree with each other. Some of the same things you're saying here, that I hear in homes across the area.
I had a woman come up at a store the other day and said, for the first time ever, I understand what my husband and my father-in-law are talking about, because she watches us have these discussions. Because there are real issues that are out there that are very difficult to do in the 22 minutes of airtime that we have available for a newscast. When you're watching this and you're watching us have these discussions, you know you're having these discussions at lunch, you're having them at breakfast. You try not to have them at Thanksgiving, and you hope you don't have them at Easter. But they're going to happen. And when they do, you've got to be able to be informed on this. This is, if you want to talk about the threat to democracy, it's the fact that we've got to be able to have these kind of discussions and come up with real solutions. And you're right.
And-
there have
and the
been
fact
mistakes
is,
on both sides.
without hating each
Exactly.
other. I mean,
Trav and I have known each other for what, 30 years now, 35?
well, I'm a little younger, but
I have better hair.
There's no doubt about
There's no
that.
doubt on that one. But these are JR, have actually been discussions.
Right.
When we were in college,
Yeah.
the college television station at Carolina.
That's right.
We had these kind of debates, and these are the types of things that when you can actually get past the issues and really start looking for solutions.
My dear friend Robert Cahaley and I debated every student organization at the University of South Carolina, and we're dear friends to this day.
Right.
And I do think that's a serious problem. I mean, there's such a vitriolic and hatred, and at times I've been part of that problem as chairman
You
of a
mean just
party.
now? I'm just kidding.
No.
I
was pointing out clear facts that Donald Trump, as president who controlled the House and the Senate, still couldn't get Mexico to pay for a border wall. Instead, he took the money away from veterans and tried to do something, but it didn't happen.
And so this is why we have these. This is what primaries are about. I had a very interesting interview with the folks from the BBC today. And
really?
Yeah. And I said, we do it differently in America than you do across the pond.
Right.
Because in America, we have a primary system. So here's your quick little civics lesson for those of you at home. We have Republicans and Democrats beat each other up on each of their parties to figure out who's going to be the person who's going to end up getting the nomination, and then we go beat up on each other this way.
And then we come together as Americans when we need to.
Right, and then the British system, they basically, once they figure out who's been elected, they then have to cobble together some form of government, and that's why they do things the way they do. But I think, JR, when we look at this is why the primaries matter. They matter because this is a place for you to actually vote on what you believe is your way of seeing America grow and change and have something happen. And that, when we have the wide open primaries like we had in 2008 and 2016, where you had 12, 15 people who were running for president of the United States, it's a lot of people having, a real debate on the issues.
And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of, it's really good for South Carolina. And I think that it is exceptional if the Republicans hit 1 million votes tonight. I think it's an exceptional opportunity for our state because up until 2008, 2010, Iowa had the highest literacy rate than any country in America, and it was directly attributed to their role in the caucuses.
Right.
And I think that every election cycle we have, specifically presidential primary, it engages our voters and they become much more informed, more so than voters in other parts of our country.
All right. And to our viewers at home, let me tell you this. When I spoke with these two on the phone earlier this week about being here tonight, I know you were excited to be here because you knew Dave was going to be here. You guys get along all the time. Just so you guys know at home.
Oh yeah, I mean,
he's good.
We run into each other at lunch and have phenomenal conversations, and we hope that you're doing the same thing.
That's right.
All right. We're going to send things back into the studio, Darcy. They're going to take a quick break, get a sip of water, calm down a little bit, but we'll be back with more a little bit later.
JR, thank you so much. I think they need to take a break and figure out how old Trav is so that they can get the numbers correct on that. How about that? All right, folks, the numbers still rolling in this GOP primary. And as you can see for yourself, it is a good day for Donald Trump here in South Carolina and his supporters with less than 20% of the precincts reporting. He is doing very well with 55.9% of the vote. At this point, nearly 20,000 more votes than Nikki Haley. And 20,000 is a key number because we know in Lexington County alone, they had nearly 20,000 people take advantage of early voting. And so this looks to be a historic race for us, and the fact that there could be as many as 1 million people who have turned out to vote. So let's take a closer look at the numbers when it comes to specific counties. We're going to keep it home. We're going to keep it central to the Midlands. And so when it comes to Republican voters in Richland County, it is a good night for Nikki Haley and her supporters. As you can see in Richland County, 0% of the precincts reporting, but this is what we're assuming would be early voting totals. People who went out and decided to vote early have said that they like Nikki Haley more than Donald Trump. But that's pretty much where that ends. As we click around the other 11 counties that encompass the Midlands, the numbers don't look as good for Haley. So we're in Lexington County. You see the numbers there. Let's go over to Calhoun County. You see the numbers there. Let's head down to Orangeburg. you see the numbers there. You'll understand the direction that I'm going as we go to Nikki Haley's home county of Bamberg County. You see the numbers there. Almost 50% of the precincts in Bamberg County. I'll go back there so you can see that. 442 votes for Donald Trump, 277 for Nikki Haley. So a lot of people had questions about whether the AP was right in calling this race so early. But as you can see, just as we look throughout the Midlands, it does seem to be a pretty lopsided competition. So let's go again around the Midlands. These are the numbers out of Orangeburg County. As we head over to Clarendon County, 8% of the precincts reporting Donald Trump doing very well with 63% of the vote at this hour. Going to head up to Sumter County, 61% for him, 37% for Haley. And then we'll click here for Lee County. Still no numbers in for Lee County. And so I imagine once those numbers do start to come in, we'll see these pictures flip-flop, and it won't be Trump and Christie, because as we know, Christie has already dropped out of the race. It will be Trump and Haley again. But here we go. Still less than 20% of the precincts reporting at this hour. Donald Trump with nearly 87,000 votes. Nikki Haley with 67,000 votes. Andrea?
All right, Darcy, thank you so much for that live look. And like Dar said, those are coming in every moment. But let's talk about delegates just for a moment. These numbers on your screen, if you can take a look there, these are the numbers before the South Carolina primary. So where does everybody stand? Donald Trump having 63 delegates going into the vote today. Nikki Haley having 17 delegates. So what does that mean for South Carolina? Well, like I said earlier, South Carolina has 50 delegates to give away. A very big number, a very big boost for somebody. Now, 29 of those delegates will go to the winner of the state, and then 3 delegates will go to the winner in each precinct. So that doesn't mean that Nikki Haley won't walk away today with any delegates, without any delegates. It is possible. Like we said, right now she's winning in Richland County in the most recent numbers. So it is possible that some of those delegates do go to her. She could pick up 3. She could pick up 6, depending on how each of our 7 congressional districts end up. But like we just looked at that map, still early numbers coming in. But even in her critical place, her hometown of Lexington County, right now Donald Trump is ahead. Darcy just pulled that up again, 52% of the vote in Lexington County going for Donald Trump. Now, of course, this is where Nikki Haley raised her family. This is where she lived prior to moving into the governor's mansion. And then in Bamberg County, where she was born and where her family lived when they came to America, down in Bamberg County, still Donald Trump ahead. Now, obviously, that is a small county, and those numbers that you see right under the percentages are actually the number of votes. So that number 442 and 277, those are the numbers of votes counted. So there is a lot to go over tonight, and we certainly appreciate you staying here with our News 19 team. I'm sticking around. Darcy's staying. JR and our insiders are going to be staying, and we do have our reporters live, not only in Charleston at Nikki Haley's watch party. There is a live look that is Trump's watch party, and that is at the state fairgrounds. We saw that he took the stage with his supporters there, and it was a big, crowded stage. A lot of people behind him. The Governor McMaster was behind him. Lieutenant Governor Pamela Yvette, Senator Lindsey Graham was behind him. Representative Joe Wilson were behind him. So we know all of those South Carolina politicians came out ahead of time and endorsed Donald Trump early in the vote. A lot more to get to, though, here tonight. You can stay with us. We will be back to give you an update at 9, and of course follow along at WLTX.com.